Hey everyone, this is Talon2461 showing you a speedrun of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle's Hero Story, done in 37 minutes and 15 seconds in real time, and 26 minutes and 1 second in SDA's game time, which is the current record in both aspects. This run was played on the PC Steam version, which is the HD re-release. This run is also single segment, which means it was done in one sitting with no timer pauses or editing cuts. Overall, this run is very solid with very good luck, and only a few execution errors here and there, and therefore it is my final run I will do with this category. I am very happy with this run and hope you guys do enjoy it. This run has three main different characters and playstyles. The action stage is played as Sonic, the hunting stage is played as Knuckles, and the mech stage is played as Tails, each having their own techniques used to go as fast as possible, which I will explain throughout the run. The first level in this game is City Escape, which is an action stage, and starts off with Sonic snowboarding down this hill. Generally I avoid the cars as they decelerate you, and I hit the ramps to gain a large amount of speed and distance. If you look closely, you see that I approach the ramps at kind of an angle, and that gives me a little extra distance and saves a bit of time. So after the snowboarding, we get into the main gameplay of the action stages. Generally I'll be spin dashing a lot in this run, as your spin dash speed is a lot higher than your running speed. So coming up is the first major glitch in this game, which skips a large amount of this level. It's triggered by hitting this ramp at a higher speed value than the game intended, which launches you further into the corner where the speed pads are. And the glitch is triggered if Sonic hits the speed pads and doesn't make contact with the floor. And this way he'll maintain his speed and stay in his ramp falling animation while being pivoted 90 degrees to the right due to the speed pads, and so is flung later into the stage, saving around 25 to 30 seconds. Now during this truck chase scene, I want Sonic to stay stuck to the ground, as flying off the hills will lose a ton of speed and a ton of time. This is why you see me charge a spin dash between each hill, because the lower your speed, the less chance you have of flying off the hill. Unfortunately in this run I still flew off two of the hills, making this a below average truck chase, and I got stuck in the wall at the end. I still finished City Escape with a time of 1:28, which could be a few seconds faster, but I'm fine with this time. One thing you'll notice in this run is that I won't always get an A rank after each stage, and that's because the point system is not solely based off just the time bonus you achieve. It's also based on the amount of enemies you destroy and rings you collect. So coming up is the first boss of this game, Bigfoot. Now normally you would have to wait for him to land before you could reach his hitbox, as your normal jump isn't quite high enough, but because his hitbox is always vulnerable, by jumping off the boxes in this stage, you can gain an extra bit of height, and that little bit of height allows you to reach Bigfoot's hitbox. So due to the invincibility frames that the boss has after each hit, the time here doesn't differ too much, so 22:42 is an expected time to get. Now coming up is the first hunting stage of this game, Wild Canyon. In these levels your objective is to find 3 Master Emerald pieces, and all the pieces are randomly generated. But since there are around 100 piece locations for each stage, I've memorized every possible first hint that corresponds to each piece location, so after reading one hint I know exactly where the piece is. Now this does give the run a large luck factor, as some pieces would be in locations which are far away and slow, and some could be in great locations which are close together and fast. But execution does matter a lot.
Found him.
Now in this case my locations were pretty bad and my execution could have been slightly better, but still I finished with a 31, which is a reasonable time.
Yeah, this is perfect.
So coming up is another boss which gives you a taste of what the mech levels would be like. It's Eggman 1. The boss itself is ridiculously easy, it's pretty much just shoot and you'll win. All you have to do is make sure that he doesn't punch you, as it will launch you off and waste time, or that you don't punch him, as it will do very little damage and waste even more time. So 1289 is around the expected time to get to this boss, and again it can't be much faster due to invincibility frames. Now we're at the first mech level of the run, Prison Lane. Tails' mech has different physics compared to Sonic and Knuckles. For example, when you turn a corner with Tails' mech, he will lose all of his momentum. So to keep his speed high, you'll see that I'll jump before every sharp turn, and that will maintain some of his speed. Now the camera in this game is very strange, as most of the time it will act on its own and change to very weird positions. And while speedrunning the game, you have to learn how to move with the camera, otherwise it makes moving with characters a lot harder. So here I do a small trick which involves jumping onto the gate as it descends, and then through a series of jumps skip that mini elevator, saving a few seconds. Here I go to the back side of the elevator, which allows me to do two things. One, I don't have to wait for the gate to descend on the elevator, and two, I could snipe an enemy later on, which saves time as I don't have to wait for a certain gate to open. Hitting the check at 51 tells me that the beginning of this prison lane was very solid. Sometimes you'll see that I don't have to jump, as they're just gradual turns, but if I'm not careful I could still mess up and lose my momentum. So you can see here how the camera is just zooming in and zooming out, and that's the game doing it, it's not me. So learning how to move with the camera is very, very important. So here is one of the mistakes I made in the run. I attempted to do the gate hop, which is similar to the previous gate hop that I did, but instead I missed it and had to wait for the elevator, wasting a few seconds. I finished with a 141, which is slightly below average, but that's mainly just because of the mistake at the end, and 141 is still a decent time.
Easy.
So here we enter the second action stage, Metal Harbor. This level is kind of tricky, as there are many places where a small movement error will result in death. Sometimes you'll see me do a spin dash before I jump, and that gives me a huge speed boost, so when I do jump, I'm able to travel a huge distance, such as here where I could just skip all these enemies. So I grabbed the light speed shoes in under 20 seconds, which is a good time. And then on this platform I chain my spin dashes together. Now by chaining them together I don't decelerate from each spin dash, and therefore I'm able to maintain my peak speed. So here is the first instance of a trick called storage. Basically what I do is I store my somersault hitbox without actually using the somersault animation, which is very slow in bringing Sonic to a complete stop. And this allows me to pass straight through objects which I normally have to somersault under, and therefore I can keep my momentum. Storage also has a few other uses which you'll see later on in the run. Now here I abuse the fact that there's a small incline at the bottom of the rocket, which I could do a spin dash jump off and gain a huge amount of height, skipping the rocket descent entirely. So here I just skip the final loop and hit the goal ring, finishing with a time of 1:23. A very nice time and very good execution.
Barely made it. Phew. So far, so good.
So here's the infamous cutscene with Sonic vs. Shadow.
That blue hedgehog again, of all places.
I found you, Faker.
Faker? I think you're the fake hedgehog around here. You're comparing yourself to me? Huh? You're not even good enough to be
I'll
my
make you eat those words.
And then we start a mini boss fight. Now here I also use storage, as my somersault hitbox allows me to walk into enemies, and instead of me taking damage, they take damage. Anything under 12 seconds here is a great time.
Do you know who I am?
get back here right now before the island blows up with you on it!
Blows up? Gotta get out of here. Find Amy and Tails. Right away.
So this is our third action stage, Green Forest. Now this level is kind of tricky because there are so many different hills which you could fly off. So it's pretty hard to stay stuck to the ground. And one thing I love about this Green Forest in the run is that I never flew off any hill, which is why it looks pretty smooth. Another example of storage is seen here. Since Somersault and Spin Dash are on the same button on the controller, by using storage and hitting a spring, I can instantly Spin Dash after I land, as the time it takes to charge the Spin Dash is added on to the time charging the Spin Dash before the spring was hit. My aim is to hit the top spring here, which has a faster vine swinging animation for whatever reason, and saves around a second compared to the other two springs. I tried to use storage on this spring, which if done correctly would allow me to light dash straight across to another spring, because the somersault hitbox is smaller so you wouldn't get caught on the fence. However, since I missed the storage this time, I got caught on the fence. Now due to the level layout, I could skip a whole section of the level with just a well-placed spin dash jump up here. And that takes me to the last checkpoint, which I hit at 115, which is really good. So after the vine swing, I need to make sure I stay on top of these falling platforms and make it to the spring, otherwise I'd waste a ton of time. Now after I hit the spring, I make it to the end of the level with a very solid time of 1:32.14, one of the best Green Forests I've had in a run.
Huh. No problem.
This is the second hunting stage of the run, Pumpkin Hill. In this level we pick up the shovel claw, which allows us to dig and is needed as some pieces need to be dug up. Since this level is very open, most pieces are easy to get to, but there are some that are hard to access, like the ones on the back side of the mountains. The first piece I got was pretty close to where I was, so it was pretty nice. The second piece, however, was pretty far away and very high up. Now height in this level is very important, because the higher you are, the easier it is to reach all the pieces, because you don't have to climb or take rockets, which in this case I had to.
It's closer. One more left.
The third piece was also pretty far away, but since I was high up from the second piece, it was easily accessible. Now this piece I have to dig for, and digging for some emeralds can be tricky, because there's usually only a small section of the wall of ground that when dug into will actually give the emerald, and missing the dig wastes a few seconds. In this case it took me 3 digs, which is kinda sloppy, but I still finished with an average time of 45.
Yeah, this is perfect.
So Mission Street is the second mech level, and the level itself is very simple because there are something called platform cycles, which are basically moving platforms that I don't have any control over and have to wait for before I could advance further into the level. So no matter how fast I go before the last checkpoint, it wouldn't matter as long as I make all the cycles. So right now I'm about to pick up the hover upgrade, and this upgrade allows the mech to hover over large gaps that the mech normally couldn't jump across, but it also allows for some cool shortcuts which you'll see in the round. So this is the first platform cycle, the wait. Now when the wait spawns, it spawns crashing downwards, and it's almost impossible to jump on top of it the first time it rises up, so I have to wait here until it crashes down again so I can jump on it. And this is the second platform cycle, which locks my checkpoint time to 54. So coming up are some caged boxes, which normally I'd have to use a rocket to destroy, but instead I could do a technique called hover jumping, which is where I double tap the jump button, so I immediately hover after I jump, and that gives me a little extra height, enough to clear those caged boxes. So here I do a shortcut to skip a section of the level by abusing the fact that when I stand in the shadow of the weight, it crashes down, and then when the switch is pressed, it raises up. So I could use the weight to give me a lift upwards. This single platform here is the other platform cycle I had to wait for, and locks my final checkpoint time at 1:40 always. Then there's this really long hover jump to cut out a bit of the level. Walking up this hill right here is faster than repeatedly jumping and hovering up it, almost half a second to a second. I stay on the inside to take the shortest path, but there is a risk of me bonking into the boxes or getting caught on the wall, but luckily it didn't happen here. I also repeatedly shoot to clear the path of all the obstacles and enemies, as hitting cars also slow you down. And I finished with a nice time of 2:18. Due to the platform cycles, the time doesn't really differ from 2:20 too much, so it could either go a second faster or a second slower. So 2:18 is a really nice time. Now we come to the third hunting level, Aquatic Mine. This level is very enclosed, which means that the time could vary wildly compared to the other hunting stages. In this intro cinematic, it's possible to see a free piece, and a free piece is when you see and collect a piece without having to read a hint monitor. Unfortunately I didn't get one this time, but I got a very good first piece, as I usually have to hit switch 3 anyway to lower the water level, so I can access the other pieces. The second piece is in an awkward place, because the camera acts very strangely in this enclosed cave, and it's kind of far away from any third piece that could spawn. But the good thing is that there is a hint monitor that's close to it. The third piece I got was pretty far away, but since switch 3 was already hit, it's easily accessible.
It's closer. I found him.
38:25 is a really good time for this stage. Times could go as low as sub 30, but they could also go as high as a minute. So getting sub 40 is fine.
This is perfect.
So now we come to Route 101, which is a sort of mini-game driving level where we have to chase the president. And since this is a speedrun, we have to reach him as fast as possible. And there are a few tricks used. You'll notice that every 20 rings I collect, I gain a boost, which boosts me to a very high speed, so ring collecting is very important. You'll also notice that I start snaking back and forth to stay in this drifting state. And what this does is it removes my speed cap that I would normally have if I wasn't drifting. Usually after a boost or a downhill section where you pick up a lot of speed, you start decelerating due to your speed cap. If you're drifting, however, there is no speed cap, so you keep your speed from boosts and from downhill sections, and the only time you lose speed is if you go uphill, hit a car, or collide into the wall. I also time my boosts and use them in the sections where I tend to slow down from an uphill section. Again, I avoid the cars as they slow you down a lot, and keep collisions to the wall to a minimum. Turning is kind of tricky, so like when you're turning into a corner, if you turn too sharply, you'll end up doing a 180-degree turn and crash straight into the wall. But if you don't turn enough, you'll also collide into the wall, so you have to find the correct balance. The overall controls are kind of hard to master when you're sliding around, so that takes a lot of practice. Looking at the lap times in this run, the first lap was a high 38, which could be a second or so faster, but my second lap was very fast, managing to sub 120 overall. The good thing about this level is, unless something goes majorly wrong, like you hit too many cars or you spin out, the time doesn't vary that much, so a very bad Route 101 would only cost a few seconds. So in this run, since my third lap was pretty nice and I collided with 0 cars, and collisions with walls were kept to a minimum, I had a pretty average route on the one, which came in at 215.49. Hidden Base is the third mech level, and in this level it's pretty easy to die and lose the run just by missing a jump or a slip of the fingers, because you hover over sand quite a lot. This level really shows off how important using hover jumps can be to help find shortcuts, such as now I'm doing a series of hover jumps to get on top of these platforms without destroying the dynamite packs, and then I float through this wall. How it works is that if the game developers didn't think that it would be possible to reach a wall in any stage, they didn't bother to make it solid, and you can see this multiple times in Hidden Base. The hover jumps here need to be quick, otherwise you won't be able to make it to the platforms, and in this run the hover jumps were pretty solid, and I didn't lose my momentum at all. It's actually faster to not chain the dynamite packs, as you have to wait for each individual homing shot to be fired. By rapid firing, the homing shots are released quicker, and the dynamite is destroyed faster. I pre-shoot the doors here to avoid losing my momentum, and hit the checkpoint with the solid 58. Now this part is pretty tricky. I have to do a lot of tight hover jumps in succession without losing my momentum so I don't fall down. And this way I'm able to skip destroying the doors, and ultimately I save a few seconds. Unfortunately in this run I fell down once, but the pots are a good backup, so I only wasted a second. So for this section I have to do a hover jump to get on top of the ledge with more keys, and then another one to get on top of that dynamite platform, and then I do another hover jump to break out of bounce, and then float and break back in later on. And this skips a door as well as a pillar that I have to wait to be destroyed. So the rest of the level just contains a few tight jumps. And I finished the level with a 155, which is a pretty solid time. The only mistake that I could see would be the time I fell during the hover jumps and had to use the pots as a backup. Everything else is pretty much perfect. So Pyramid Cave is a very fast-paced level with many shortcuts. Starting out here, I spin dash through the tunnel, which is the fastest way to get through it. Cutting the corners can be tricky because sometimes you can lose a lot of your speed if you cut too much of one corner. So I do a cool shortcut here by spin dash jumping into this hourglass, and it gives me an upwards boost because of how the angle of the hitbox is shaped. And this jump is barely possible. A lot of the time I end up falling, but this time it went smoothly. So right now I'm about to pick up the best upgrade in this game. It's called the Bounce Bracelet, and the Bounce Bracelet allows me to do a trick called the Super Bounce, which is a technique used to access great heights. And by using the Super Bounce here, I could go so high that I am able to skip the first key door, because if you go high enough then the wall is no longer solid, just like on Hidden Base. So for the second key door, I'm actually able to pass straight through it, as there's a small gap between the wall and the door, just big enough for Sonic to spin dash through. And this saves me having to go and collect the key just to open the door. It saves around 20 seconds. So explaining a bit more about what super bouncing is, when you move into a wall and bounce, it converts all your forward momentum into vertical momentum. So by spin dashing into a wall, you'll have a large amount of horizontal speed. And if you bounce just before you hit the wall, that horizontal speed will be converted into vertical speed. And sometimes that could make the Sonic bounce extremely high, and that's what super bouncing is. So right here I skip this loop with the super bounce, and then I do something called gravity control, which is when you spin dash off an incline and bounce, and by doing that you keep the gravity you had when you were on the incline when you bounce, and this allows me to shortcut straight to the goal ring with an extremely good time of 135, the best Pyramid Cape I've ever had in a run. Now for the hardest hunting stage, Death Chamber. So right up at the start I do a spiral uppercut to check behind me for a 3-piece, and it just so happens that in this run I managed to get one, and immediately I knew it was going to be a good Death Chamber, as a 3-piece saves a huge amount of time in this stage. Now my second piece, Yellow and Black Stripes, is also really good as well, because it's in between the red room and the green room, which is both close to me and close to other hint monitors, so I'll easily be able to read a hint for the third piece. However, the third piece that I got in the treasure chest is probably the worst third piece I could have gotten from where I was. It's in the secret blue room, which is very far away from where I am at the moment. This level really shows off how movement and camera control can save a lot of time, and that knuckle stages aren't just based on luck. Like, if my movement wasn't optimal here, I'd be bumping into every single wall, and it would waste a huge amount of time. But in this run, my execution was pretty poor. So despite the third piece being in a bad spot, due to the 3-piece, this ended up being a really good Death Chamber. Anything under a minute is amazing.
Yeah, this is perfect. Huh? Who's there? What the? A ghost?
So this is the next boss, King Boom Boo. What I have to do is run behind him when he's about to breathe fire after throwing his 4 flames at me, and flip the hourglass. But if I go too soon, he'll turn around and that would waste time. Now usually you'd only be able to hit him once per cycle, and then you'd have to repeat the cycle 4 times. However, since Knuckles actually runs slightly faster than King Boom Boo after he's been hit once, it's possible to catch up to him and get all 4 hits in one cycle, which you'll see me do now.
What a hassle.
So now for the hardest boss in the run, Egg Golem. If you remember the super bounce technique I said earlier, well now I have to do it off these really small walls from a really short distance. It's not just a case of spin dashing into the wall. And this is a lot harder than it seems. Now my aim is to get 3 super bounce hits on him, and then when he slams his head down I am able to bounce and reach his head for another hit. And then the last hit I run around to the back and get the last hit normally. And this run pulled it off extremely well.
Nice try, Rocky.
I'm very happy Egg Golem went this well. So this is the final mech stage and the longest stage in the game, Eternal Engine. A few things to say here. A lot of the doors are locked, so I need to destroy the enemies as fast as possible to open them. And locking onto the enemies can be kinda tricky with the camera angles I get. You also see me before each door do a small jump and hover, and this prevents me from bonking into the door and losing my momentum. Another thing to note is there's a platform cycle at around 1 minute and 20 seconds into the stage, and in order to perform Eternal Engine optimally, I need to reach a very early cycle in that platform cycle, and to do that, I need to hit the midway check at 1:05 or sooner. And that is a very tight checkpoint to make, so I need to make very few mistakes in order to reach it. The hover jump here is pretty tight, and it's really easy to miss it and lose the run, which I've actually done before. But in this run it all went well. So I crossed the checkpoint at 1:04, which is a very good time and tells me that I should easily make the cycle, as long as I don't get hit by anything. So this is the early cycle. If I was a second or so later, I wouldn't be able to hover or jump to the first platform, and I'd have to wait 7 seconds before I'm able to jump to it. So it's a good thing I made it this time. Now the camera angle outside here is very strange due to the way it moves, and it's very hard to control Kelsey Mech optimally. There are also many enemies that can easily just hit me off the stage, as well as dynamite packs on the floor, which if I lock onto and destroy will cause the floor to break. So there's many things to screw me over here. So here I grab the power up, which allows me to destroy the metal boxes, and the only time it's used in the run is immediately after I collect it, and then it's never used again. A lot of the artificial chaoses, which are the blue enemies, are really good at sniping, especially this one. But I managed to destroy it before it hit me, which was good. So outside here, it's actually faster to hover across rather than just float across. And then there's another artificial chaos which can snipe you. Now the freefall section here is really tricky because of the artificial chaoses which can hit you, as well as the lasers being in strange patterns. Now at the end, I hover to destroy the power supply because it's faster than landing on the platform. And again, you see me rapid fire instead of chaining everything together. 2:48 is a great time here, which I'm happy with.
I gotta do better next time.
Now we come to the final hunting stage, Meteor Herd. Again, this stage is very open, and height is important. So the first piece I got was on the ground, but it's on the opposite side, as well as very far away from most other hint monitors.
It's closer, more left.
The second piece I got was very good, as it's pretty much right next to me after I get off the rocket.
It's closer. One more left.
And finally, the third piece I got was very good, as all I have to do is one drill core after I take the rocket to the arc.
It's closer. I found him.
The luck in that stage was pretty nice, and apart from the small fumble to get on the last rocket, my execution was good.
Yeah, this is perfect.
Long time no see, treasure hunter. Did you find my emerald?
That's a good one. Your emerald. Talking to you is a waste of time.
Now for another boss fight, Rouge. After 18 seconds, the floor opens up, and I have to fight Rouge while floating, and that's very difficult. However, it's possible to get all 4 hits on her before the floor opens up, and that saves a huge amount of time. The ring I grabbed was for safety, just in case she hit me.
I never lose.
Get away from my emerald.
Now we come to the penultimate level, Crazy Gadget, and this level has the biggest and coolest glitch in the run. It involves abusing the gravity switches which are in the level and allow me to change the gravity freely. Everything before the first checkpoint was really smooth in this run. So I grabbed the checkpoint just in case, and here comes the start of the glitch. First off, I changed the gravity to the left using the switch, and then I do this really tight spin dash jump off a tiny platform, which if I miss results in death. After the jump, I'm further into the level with this weird gravity, which is clearly not supposed to happen, as you could see by Sonic's falling animation on the walls. Then I have to get on this ledge so I can spin dash and hit the enemy to open the door, which is a lot harder than it looks. And now for the final part of the glitch, I break out of bounds due to collision detection, and due to the level layout I could bounce straight into the goal ring. And this is really tricky because I have very little reference, and if I miss, the run is completely over. Luckily in this run I managed to hit the goal ring with a good time of 1:10.
Huh. No problem.
Now for Eggman 2. Now this boss is different to Eggman 1 because this time he has this huge frickin' laser which if hits me pretty much results in my death. But since I know what I'm doing, the boss itself isn't too difficult. Once he doesn't punch me, because if he punches me and then fires his laser, it's very hard to avoid him. Luckily it didn't happen in this run, and I finished the boss with a good time.
Machinist reached, I did it!
Now comes the final level in this game, Final Rush. Now this level is really annoying after a glitch was found by Chain Jumper, which saves a whopping 50 seconds, but it's so hard to execute consistently that it's ruined at least 15 of my runs. Basically there's a gap between two kill planes after the long winding rail, which I have to jump and bounce through. And since I'm going so fast and the camera is strange, and the gap is small, and the angle I bounce at is different every time, it's very difficult to aim and get right every time. So here it comes, the jump and then the bounce. And this run managed to get the glitch first try, which is really awesome. But it's not over yet. There's a kill plane after around 15 seconds of falling to the left, which I have to avoid. And then after I pass the kill plane, I need to turn back to the left in order to make it to the goal ring. Now if I turn too early, I will hit the kill plane and die. But if I turn too late, I will be too low and not be able to make it to the goal ring. And at this point I was really nervous that I was going to mess it up, but it went well. At this point I didn't really care what time I got on Final Rush once I got the glitch, but 1:12 is okay. I wasted around a second or so hitting the first checkpoint in case the glitch didn't happen on the first try and I wanted to try again, so 1:12 is a decent time.
Huh. No problem.
So here it is, the final boss of Hero Story, Shadow 2. Now I had a strat that allows me to finish the boss in under 20 seconds, and I tried to pull it off here, but due to the nerves I ended up somersaulting instead of spin dashing, so I had to resort to a different strat. Now Shadow's AI is programmed to dodge most hits from Sonic as the fight goes on, but he's not programmed to dodge Sonic's bounce attack at all. So I get 3 bounces on him here, and then go forward because I don't want to risk death at this point. And then when he respawns, I get 2 bounces on him and finish in 26 seconds, which is an acceptable time. And that's it. That is Sonic Adventure 2 Battles Hero Story, done in 37 minutes and 15 seconds in real time, and 26 minutes and 1 second in SDA's game time, which are the individual level times added up all together.
Sonic,
As far as
you did
mistakes
it.
go in this run, there were only a few which costed a second or so, such as rolling off the hills in City Escape, or the prison lane elevator, or the hidden base hover jumping for example, but those are minor mistakes. There were pretty much no major mistakes in this run. I admit the Shadow 2 fight could have gone around 5 seconds faster, but it's so nerve-wracking at the end of the run that I'm pretty much fine with it. Now this run I'm extremely satisfied with, and I don't think I can take it much lower unless a major glitch is found, which would make me sad because I really like this run. So for me, I'm probably going to move on to other things such as experimenting with the sequence break in this game to the credits, or routing out the 180 emblem run properly. And I also might try and beat Sonic Guitar's Dark Story game time run, which would be very tricky, but it is possible. If you don't know already, I stream all my runs on twitch.tv/talon2461. The link is in the description. If you like watching live streams, then definitely go check it out. I'd like to give shoutouts to Sonic Guitar for his awesome Hero and Dark Story run, to YoshiFan28 who inspired me to start speedrunning and pick up this game, and Broken Arthritis for the great competition in Hero Story. If you have any questions, feel free to PM me, and if you're interested in picking up this game, I do plan to do a tutorial for Hero Story in the future, so be sure to look out for that. Anyway, thanks everyone for watching this run, and I hope you guys really enjoyed it.